Hi, and welcome once again to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is March 20th, and today we're going to hear part 2 of this article, which was really a lot of fun at the end of yesterday's program, I think.
Yeah, we talked about some staple foods, specifically noodles for most of the article. And then at the end, I have to say bravo to Karen again. I popped a quiz on her. She had no advance notice that I would ask her the world's top 10 staple foods. She got 8 out of 10, which is exceptional considering how unusual some of these foods are for some people.
With a few hints from Chris, but still, yeah, we got through it. Our title is Japan, a Paradise for Noodle-Lovers. So that led Chris to look into what the most common starchy foods are of the world. Should we go over the list again?
Yeah, let's reread through it. So,
number 1 is?
Rice.
Okay, number 2 is wheat.
And number 3, corn.
Corn, yeah, especially in the U.S. Actually, in the U.S., it is nearly impossible to eat anything without corn in it because so much corn is grown and it has a lot of products that weren't initially useful. So a lot of researchers and chemists tried to figure out ways to use these products. We came out with high fructose corn syrup, which is used to sweeten just about all processed foods, all kinds of processed foods. They also came up with vitamin E extracted from corn. So many things are extracted from corn. They said that American bodies are usually like 1/4 corn.
Oh my goodness. That's
if you
ridiculous.
Analyze our blood.
For sure. And I remember biofuels using kind of corn-based, and everyone got all freaked out because there wouldn't be enough high fructose corn syrup. I was like, yeah, like that was one of the concerns. Like it would take away, make this more expensive. Food costs would go up. I'm like, it's kind of good for you.
You shouldn't be consuming corn syrup in the first place. Okay, so that's the first 3. Then we have barley. Potatoes on there. I'm not doing them in order. Okay, potato. And then?
You hit cassava, which I thought was very impressive because cassava is not readily eaten all over the place. It's very important for African and South American diets.
And Caribbean.
And Caribbean diets, that's right. And it's just not one that jumps to mind, I would say, for most people.
But actually, I have friends who either live in or have lived in South America, and they talk about it a lot. It's also extremely important in Africa, and I pay attention to both those cultures. And in addition, I had some recently.
Oh, okay.
There is a restaurant that serves authentic Caribbean food, and that's not something you often get in Taiwan. Right. It's so unusual. I really recommend you try it if you want to try some unusual and delicious foods. Normally, I do not eat sweets. I avoid desserts. But it looked so unusual. I tried their cassava pudding, and it was delicious.
Number 6, I offered Karen a hint. I said it's one of the 3 sisters. The 3 sisters in American social studies class, children learn that Native Americans, especially in the northeastern part of the United States, had 3 very important foods: corn, beans, and squash. Squash means things like pumpkins and stuff.
And those are all from the Americas. So they were introduced to the people from Europe way back in the 1600s or earlier, and they became very important foods all over the world. But they are from the Americas, and many kinds of beans are also from the Americas.
And then Karen had a really fun ending here where she had I don't know how to say it in English. I can only say it in German. This is my favorite part. So number 7 was millet.
That's right. And I couldn't think of the English word. I knew the Chinese word.
The Chinese, that's right.
The Chinese word means small rice. So that was in my head in Chinese. And I had the German word, which goes back to the 70s. My German father was talking about a grain, and he said, Hilse. And I go, oh, and he says, do you know what that is? I said, yes, it's millet. He said, oh, you know that word. He was impressed.
That's funny. So barley, my wife is a big fan of. That's number 8. And she makes this barley soup, which I didn't know you could do until I came to Taiwan. And it tastes like nachos to me.
Was it sweet or savory?
It was unsweetened. I think she just made it straight, and we would
really
drink it that way. It's really delicious.
It's very good.
It tastes like nacho chips to me, but not nearly as unhealthy. I really enjoy it. It's like, if I want nachos, I will drink barley soup.
Okay, and last on the list?
Sorghum and then quinoa.
Okay, sorghum is an important grain of northern China. There's a movie with the word red, or the words red sorghum in it. You can go online and look it up. It's found in very ancient texts. It's been around a long time. And quinoa is from South America, especially Peru, and it's a very trendy thing to eat these days.
Yeah, I ate a lot of it a few years ago. It was available in Costco in Taiwan very readily. It's drier than rice, but it works basically the same. I will say I prefer the rice. My wife makes like this healthy full grain rice and adds stuff to it. I prefer that over the quinoa, but I did enjoy the quinoa as a matter of fact. I was just more accustomed to rice instead of the quinoa, but it wasn't like I disliked it.
Okay, and
it is very healthy.
Quinoa is not a grain, it is a grass. And that's true of wild rice, which is our specialty in Minnesota and then the part of Canada right north of us. And there is one grain that did not make the list that is also important in my heritage. So wild rice is important to me as a Minnesotan, but another important grain is rye.
Right, oh yeah.
Because in all of Scandinavia and then other parts of Northern Europe, maybe the north part of Germany as well, rye is an extremely important grain. Wheat was really hard to get. They couldn't grow it in that climate, I think, and it was very, very expensive. And so my mother used to make Swedish rye bread. It's something
I love good rye bread.
That really came down to me straight from Europe.
Delicious.
So, yeah, rye didn't quite make it. And it's called naked wheat in Chinese. That's the name, naked wheat. All right, so we're talking about grains. That was a really fun part of the show last time. But today we're going to go back to talking about Japanese noodles. So, Japan, a paradise for noodle lovers. As with many aspects of Japanese culture, there is etiquette to follow when you enjoy noodles. To fully experience noodles like a local on your next visit to Japan, consider these simple guidelines.
First, be careful where you put your chopsticks. Don't leave them sticking up in the broth or set them at the side of the bowl. When you have finished eating, or if you're taking a break, place them on the chopstick rest next to the bowl. Also, it is impolite to wave chopsticks around or bring them above mouth level. Second, don't take too many breaks or spend a long time eating your meal. Noodles taste the best when they are freshly boiled. It is proper etiquette to eat them swiftly. Third, it is a sign of respect to finish everything you order. That means people should try to empty their bowls by drinking the broth left after finishing the noodles. Diners are encouraged to lift the bowl to their mouth just as if it were a giant cup.
Visitors to Japan may also notice that Japanese people love to slurp their noodles. Although making such noises while dining may seem rude in many countries, in Japan, slurping shows appreciation and indicates that diners enjoy the taste. People say that taking air into one's mouth with each slurp also enhances the flavors of the broth and noodles. Lastly, people slurp to help them finish their noodles as fast as possible, which, of course, is the best way to enjoy them. Now, that is arguable, but let's come back to that later. Back to the beginning. As with many aspects of Japanese culture, there is etiquette to follow when you enjoy noodles. Now, etiquette means rules for politeness, the way you should do something to make other people feel comfortable that you respect their culture and you're not doing something that annoys other people.
There's a huge, fascinating story here that we do not have time for. Maybe it could be its own article someday. So etiquette is literally French for ticket. So
it also means label.
That's right. So when the manners and the etiquette that we enjoy today in Western society were first being introduced, especially at the court of Louis XIV, you were handed a card and said, you need to do exactly these rules. And if you don't, Louis XIV is going to lose his mind and you're going to get thrown out, and that's a bad thing. Please don't do it.
Are you going to be sent to the guillotine?
Not necessarily. Just this was a guy you really didn't want to annoy. This was a man that people would line up to help him put his pants on in the morning. That's the kind of guy we're talking about here.
And they would stand by him when he was using the toilet.
That's exactly right. So here's a card of rules. Stand by Louis when he's poo-pooing. Help him put his pants on. You know, all these rules. And these Western manners, the word etiquette just means a ticket full of rules.
Yeah, and I remember running into a German, how he's comparing about all the noises people made. We were in Hong Kong at the time. When they were eating, I said, well, you don't like Chinese food? No. He says, it's the way they bring it to themselves. Yeah, I'm tempted to say it in German because he said it in such a hoity-toity way. Es ist wie man das Essen zu sich nimmt. You know, he did it in this, I just don't like the way they bring it to their mouths.
I tell you the truth, I also really disdain of food sounds. I can't stand it. It drives me bananas. Even in commercials, like hearing the psst, glug, 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 and the guy drinks it. Oh, nothing drives me battier. It drives me insane. I don't know why, but if I hear a commercial or someone eating loudly, like I'm turning up loud rock and roll music, it drives me bonkers. I can't handle it.
That is a real physical condition. There are people who cannot stand the sound of food being chewed.
I know it's me. I shouldn't be concerned with other people. Other people are allowed to be themselves. Manners are subjective, but personally, I can't stand it.
You may have that condition because it is a real physical condition, something you're born with.
Revulsion. It's revulsion.
Yeah, they physically cannot stand it. They will have to leave the room. They cannot stand listening to other people chew. I can't remember it. There is a very specific term for it. I can't remember right now, but it is a real thing. Okay, our next sentence. To fully experience noodles like a local on your next visit to Japan, consider these simple guidelines. So before you go to Japan and you plan on eating noodles, and you probably will eat lots of noodles if you're on a budget because that's the one really inexpensive prepared food you can get in Japan is noodles.
You know what this article reminds me of? When I first came to Taiwan in 2005, I was gifted a Lonely Planet guidebook. And I read it like front cover to cover. I wanted to read just what did this person have to say? And of course, I'm on a long flight. And a lot of these rules were in there. And a lot of it was like, okay, I kind of understand this. Some of the things were new to me. But this reads like a foreigner's guide to being polite in Asia. We have a phrase that goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, meaning try to blend into your culture. Personally, I will not be doing most of these tips, but that's okay. Your mileage may vary.
There is another little saying we like to quote, know before you go. At least that way you know what the customs are and you can make your own choices, but you're aware of them, and that's important. If you offend people without knowing what's going on, that's really a lousy feeling. People are irritated and you have no idea what you did.
I'm going to use this phrase tomorrow with our sister magazine, Enjoy English School. Know before you go, because we have a very similar topic here. Let's go to our paragraph. First, be careful where you put your chopsticks.
And that is an issue. If you have gotten chopsticks that are in a little paper wrapper, you can usually fold up the paper wrapper and use it as a chopstick rest.
Don't leave them sticking up in the broth or set them at the side of the bowl.
You usually hear that rule in regards to rice. Do not stick your chopsticks in your rice. Many foreigners have done that without knowing they were being offensive.
Yeah. Also, no drum solos. And that's a common thing. So I loved playing drums as a teenager. So a pair of chopsticks were like instant drum solo, twirling them. And it was just habit.
What do you strike? The table?
Strike everything. So
I love striking the rice bowls because it makes beautiful sounds.
Those nice clean clings. And
I'm into sound. I teach phonetics. So I got stopped by my kid's dad once. I do it when nobody's around.
So pen tapping is a popular pastime in some parts of America. You use pens to create drum solos. This is very common with young people with chopsticks. You do need to teach them this one. Let's continue. When you have finished eating, or if you're taking a break, place them on the chopstick rest next to the bowl.
And that's assuming you have a chopstick rest, which you will not have normally in the West, and then you can fold your own out of paper.
Rest is a noun here. Be careful. Also, it is impolite to wave chopsticks around or bring them above mouth level. I'm curious about bringing them above mouth level. I'm trying to think of the circumstance in which I'm bringing them above mouth level.
You need to scratch your scalp.
Like bag scratching. Okay, touche.
Yeah, but the first part of it actually is something we would not do normally in the West anyway. It's sort of like not running with scissors, because if you're waving it around, it's quite dangerous.
It seems aggressive. I've seen people in videos where they're mad, like waving their chopsticks a certain way. Yeah.
No good.
Okay, let's continue. Second, don't take too many breaks or spend a long time eating your meal.
And they will tell you the reason soon. And it is really true, because with noodles, it's really best to eat them when the broth is really hot. When it's cold, they're just not as appealing.
How long is too long for a meal for you?
I don't know, but on the other hand, I don't like it when people shovel food in.
I'm a very fast eater. My wife is an exceptionally slow eater. And I've just become patient and just waiting. She knows I eat faster. I have begun eating slower, but it's still far faster than her. For me, like dinner more than 2 hours, we got to go.
Too much.
Yeah, that's too much.
Okay, so for my kid's dad, he said, I learned this in the military. He is done with supper in 7 minutes flat.
That's funny. My father would eat. When he was finished, he would go. We would just leave. So we had to keep his pace. He was also in the military, but he never explained it that way. I wonder if this is not related.
Could be. An older guy, yeah.
Okay, let's continue on. Noodles taste the best when they are freshly boiled.
We've already mentioned that, and they're hot, yeah.
And boiled is a nice, fun Latin word for bubble. It is proper etiquette to eat them swiftly.
Okay, I don't like being rushed when I'm eating, but just so you know.
How hot do you want your food? Do you want it boiling, screaming hot, or do you let your food cool down a little bit?
You have to be careful not to burn your tongue and your palate.
My wife loves eating it exceptionally hot. Like, I need my food, even though I eat much faster than her, I need it to cool down a little bit. She wants it as hot as she can physically stand it.
I think it's good to serve it that hot, but you may want to wait a bit. Where it's really dangerous is with pizza, a warning to everybody, because cheese contains a lot of oil and you can really burn yourself badly.
Okay. Third, it is a sign of respect to finish everything you order.
Okay. Were you trained to clean your plate as a kid?
Yes, I was a very picky young child. My wife still likes me to finish my food, but my wife doesn't like that I'm kind of a tall, skinny guy. She wants me to be like beefy meatball. And so she always gives me more food than I can handle. And so I've just had to say, no, thanks. I can't eat this.
Okay, my mother-in-law has a really good rule. She says, if I have chosen it myself, I have a duty to finish it. If someone else has served it to me, I'm not going to force myself to finish it. And I totally agree.
Do you try lots of things on the menu when you visit a restaurant, or are you a person that likes to order the same thing over and over again?
I do both.
You do both. I'm pretty much a order the same thing every time kind of guy. Let's continue. That means people should try to empty their bowls by drinking the broth left after finishing the noodles.
Which I can understand, but in fact, they put a lot of salt and a lot of other things in it. You're going to be drinking a very, very salty broth.
That's right. Now, let's just be very specific here. So the word broth just means soup, but it's a thicker soup that is made out of like meat scraps, oil, and vegetables. It's boiled down, and it's meant to make the soup even more flavorful. So broth and soup are technically a little bit different.
Okay, so broth is a little bit thicker than something we call consommé. You don't have to worry about that word. So that is almost like water. So broth is richer. It's got more flavors in it. It's got the meat flavors and the fats and things from the meat. But then you can go on to thicker versions. We'll talk about that another time. We're sticking with noodles now.
Let's continue to our next sentence here. Diners are encouraged to lift the bowl to their mouth just as if it were a giant cup.
Now, that is considered bad manners in the West.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, you just keep supping the soup, right? So I'm using two unusual words here. We have diners, which looks like the word dinner. That just means people who eat. Diners are also small restaurants common in some parts of the United States. They're famous like in movies and TV shows. And then I said to sup, and this means to eat with a spoon, sucking up especially soup.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're normally not supposed to bring bowls to our mouths, and definitely not plates. But especially the way a lot of Chinese people finish their rice, they bring it to their mouth and they shovel it in with the chopsticks. Don't do that in the West.
My father would say it was eating like a dog. Like it was one of his habits. He really did not like. My stepmom would bring the food to her mouth, a plate or a bowl, and he's like, "You're eating like a dog."
Yeah, so be
very
careful.
direct.
We have very different standards in the West. Yeah, and it's good to be aware of them. Our last paragraph. Visitors to Japan may also notice that Japanese people love to slurp their noodles.
I looked up the etymology for slurp. I said, what's the definition of this? And it's a Dutch noun and a verb. And in Dutch, it's called slurpen, which it just made me so happy to hear, okay, slurp and slurpen, okay.
Okay, my experience with this is I have a very close British friend, and he came to visit once in Taiwan and was having a meal at our house. And then I saw that he was just staring at me. And he says, Karen, don't slurp your noodles.
Oh, man. This is a huge taboo. Like, slurping food is like a huge no-no. For me, it's just, I can't handle it.
My British friend could not handle it. He was so put off.
Oh,
all
awful.
Right. Although making such noises while dining may seem rude in many countries. In Japan, slurping shows appreciation and indicates that diners enjoy the taste, which I explained to my British friend, and he just shook his head.
Yeah,
No.
so manners and etiquette, they're subjective. Do what you want, but do be aware that it may influence the thinking and feelings of others.
Exactly, and he couldn't accept it in me. Okay, next sentence. People say that taking air into one's mouth with each slurp also enhances the flavors of the broth and noodles, and that is really true. It sort of brings in oxygen, and then the flavors will be much, much more apparent in your mouth.
I don't need this to be intellectualized.
But it definitely helps mixing air, and then you can taste it much, much better. The flavors will be stronger. Lastly, people slurp to help them finish their noodles as fast as possible, which, of course, is the best way to enjoy them. But not too fast. I mean, you could get a stomachache from eating too fast.
Yeah, no thanks.
Okay, so our first question.
According to the Day 1 passage, which of the following statements is true?
A. In Japan, those who enjoy eating udon noodles usually prefer hot weather. No.
B. Ramen noodles are typically accompanied by wasabi and seaweed.
That's soba. C. If you want to get full, it is recommended to order udon noodles, and that is true. Those are those big, thick, round ones.
That's the exact reason I prefer udon noodles. Letter D. Japanese people brought noodles to China in the 9th century.
No. Okay, number 2. It is summertime. Rachel is placing an order for noodles at a Japanese restaurant. She would like something to cool her off a bit, but is not fond of very thick noodles. What kind of noodles would she probably choose? Letter C, soba. That is the correct answer. Okay, number 3.
What is viewed as proper when eating noodles in a Japanese restaurant?
A, leaving soup broth in the bowl.
B, pointing with your chopsticks?
No.
No, that's very impolite.
C, taking a long time to finish.
Restaurants want you out.
Yeah, and also they'll get cold if you got hot noodles.
Letter D, consuming all the food you've ordered.
And that is the correct answer, but in the West, especially in the States, we say clean up your plate. Yeah, and that's the way I was taught when I was a kid. Number 4, what is not a reason Japanese people slurp their noodles while eating?
Letter A, it is said to increase the flavor.
And that is true, so it's not a right answer. B, it shows that one enjoys the meal, and that is also true, so it's not a right answer.
C, slurping is considered a beautiful sound, which No.
Maybe the Japanese also don't think it's beautiful, even if they take it as a compliment to the chef. So C is the correct answer. We still have D. Slurping noodles helps one eat quickly. And that, in fact, is true, so that's another wrong answer for this question. C, slurping is considered a beautiful sound. Like I said, maybe it's a compliment to the chef, but not necessarily something that you enjoy listening to, especially people like Chris, who doesn't like to listen to other people eating.
No, I don't like it.
Okay, and that is it for today. Tune in next time. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.